Hey, fourth grade, it is math time. I'm Miss Flores, just in case you forgot. We're going to do lesson 91 together. So go ahead and take out your math book and make sure you have your math paper out. If you have some scratch paper, you can use that. Make sure your power-up's out so that you can write your lesson practice on there. And let's get started. All right, so lesson 91, it says estimating multiplication and division answers. So basically what estimation helps us with is to help us to prevent mistakes, meaning that we could look at a big problem and think, wow, that looks really difficult and really challenging to solve. Maybe if we round it to like the nearest 10 or the nearest 100, because we know how to do that, it can help us to kind of like guess what the answer could possibly be. And also it can help us say, I wonder if my answer is correct. Well, let me just round it real quick to double check, and then we can see if our answers are correct, if they match up, and that sort of thing. So I'm going to be starting off in example 1. And I also have my whiteboard that I'm going to show you guys in a little bit so I can work through this problem with you and kind of see how to do that. So let me pull that up real quick for you guys. All right, so you should be able to see my whiteboard right now. There's my hand. Okay, so I'm going to use that today, and then we'll go through some homework problems together. So if you feel like you understand how to estimate, and you went through the examples and you thought, oh, I totally get it, I just want to skip over to the homework part, you can go ahead and fast forward to that section where I'm going to do a few homework problems with you. So I'm going to try and do a few every time. If you look ahead and see, tomorrow I see that number 7, it looks like it might be challenging, go ahead and you can send me a comment or an email, and you can request a problem to do for the next day, and then I'll try and get that in for you. All right, let's look at example 1. It says Luke multiplied 43 by 29 and got 203. Is Luke's answer reasonable? Okay, so is his answer 203 reasonable for multiplying numbers 43 and 29? Okay, so let's think about that. Okay, it's probably not, but it could be. So the way we can check to see is by estimating the product. Okay, so the estimated product of 43 and 29. So that means that if we're going to estimate, we need to round. So the numbers, okay, so and then I will write up here example 1 so that you guys all know at home which example I'm on. Okay, example 1. And it gives us the numbers 43 and 29. So the first thing we need to do is we need to round 43. So we're actually going to round that to 40. Okay, and then we have the number 29. We're going to round that to 30. Okay, the reason we round is because 3 is less than 5. So that means that the 4 is going to go ahead and stay as a 4. So we're going to make that 40. And 9 is above 5. So that means the 2 is going to go up to 3 and become 30. All right, now we can multiply, right? We can multiply. Again, they both have zeros right here. So this is an easy problem of a 4 times 3. So 4, 8, 12. And then we can add the 2 zeros, 1, 2. So it looks like that his answer should be around 1,200. So it says Luke's answer of 203 is actually way off. So we know that the number 203 is nowhere near 1,200. So you might be thinking, okay, well, it is just really challenging to do this type of multiplication problem. It can be challenging. It does take more time. So if we're estimating, then a quick way we can do that is by rounding, that we can kind of see that this answer, if we were actually to work it out, okay, and then on the bottom in your book, it does say, what is the exact product? So let's actually work it out together to see what we get. Okay, so it has to be around 1,200. So the first step we do for 2 by 2 multiplication, which we did this last week, is we look at the 1's place value. So we see the 9. So now we're going to multiply 9 times 3 first. So counting by 9s, 9, 18, 27. So we bring down the 7 and carry over the 2. Now we multiply 9 times 4. Again, counting by 9s, 9, 18, 27, 36, plus 2, 38. Okay, now since I have a whiteboard, I'm just going to erase this little 2 right here. Now we go to the tens place value, and we have a 2. So we're going to multiply 3 times through 2. Oops, I forgot. I'm going to put a 0 so that we don't forget to skip this place value. Okay, so 3 times 2, which is 6. And then we do 4 times 2, which is 8. Now we add them up. 7 plus 0 is 7. 8 plus 6 is 14. We put the 4 down, carry over the 1. 3 plus 1 is 4, and 8 plus 4 is 12. So your answer, if we were to work this out actually, is 1,247, okay? And is that number close to 1,200? And the answer is yes. They are close, okay? They are close. So do you see how this number is way different from 203, which is what Luke got? And we're not talking about Luke in my class. Hi, Luke. But you guys just have the same name. So we're talking about Luke in the book. All right, let's go ahead and do example 2 together. Example 2 is pretty similar to example 1. So let's read that together. An auditorium has 42 rows of seats. There are 53 seats in each row. The sales department sold 2,000 tickets. Will all the people with a ticket have a seat, or will they need to bring an extra chair? Okay, so they're basically saying they sold this many tickets, but they only have this many seats. Okay, so now we need to see if there's actually enough seats for everybody in the auditorium, or if they need more chairs. So it says we do not need an exact number. We can estimate. Again, there's the word estimate, which means we're going to round. So the product by rounding each number to the nearest 10 and then multiplying. Okay, so in example 2, and I'm going to use a different color. Let's go with red. Okay, example 2, I'm going to put that right here. Okay. Example 2, so the number 42 gets rounded to 40 because we're looking at the 2. Again, that's less than 5, so the 4 is going to stay the same, so we're going to change that to 40. And then 53, also the 3 is less than 5, so that's going to stay 5 is going to stay the same. Gets rounded to 50. So now we can multiply. Again, this is an easy math problem. 5 times 4, counting by 5s, 5, 10, 15, 20. And then we add our 2 zeros. So we get 2,000, okay? So it says there are about 2,000 seats in the auditorium, so all the people with tickets should or will have a seat, okay? So then it says, how can we decide if the estimate is reasonable, okay? We can decide where we can work out the whole thing, okay? Since it was rounded down, it might be a little bit lower than what they need. So maybe you might have to add a few chairs, right? Because if these are the actual, if they need, they need 2,000 seats. So since it was lower than what they actually need, they're going to be okay because we took off, 2 over here and 3. So that means there is going to be enough seats for 2,000 tickets. Okay. All right. Now let's do some lesson practice together. So I'm going to go ahead and erase the examples. If you want to pause it on that board, you can pause it and take a look for yourself. They're also in your book that you're more than welcome to go back and look at. All right, so let's look at lesson practice. So lesson practice. How's everybody's, I guess this would be your Wednesday. Hope your Wednesday's going well. Hope you're wearing your Royals shirt. I know I'm wearing my jacket today. Okay. So Wednesday, let's see, Wacky Wednesday. Maybe you can do something wacky today. All right, lesson practice A. It says to estimate the product or quotient, then find the exact answer. So the first thing they ask us to do is to estimate. and then we need to find the exact answer. Okay, so let's look at lesson practice A. Put it right here. Okay, the numbers they give us are 58 and 23. Now I'm going to write it out now because we're going to have to go in and do the exact answer anyway. So I'm just going to leave it on that side. But I'm also going to round 58 to 60 because we're looking at the 8. It's above 5. So that means 5 needs to go up. So we're going to go up to 60. That means 23 is going to be rounded to 20. So we're going to go down because 3 is less than 5. All right, so now we can multiply. Again, it's with the zeros. Don't worry about the zeros. We'll add them later. So 6 times 2 is 12. And then we add the 2 zeros, 1, 2, and we get 1,200. Now it's asking us to find the actual answer as well. So again, 2 by 2 multiplication, we look at the ones place value first. So 8 times 3, 8, 16, 24. 4 comes down, and 2 gets carried over. Then we do 5 times 3. 5, 10, 15. Plus 2 is 17. All right, I'm going to get rid of my little 2 up here because I don't need it. I'm going to move over to the tens place value. So we do our first, sorry, I forgot my multiplication symbol. We do our first multiplication problem, which is 8 times 2, which is, now make sure that you put a 0. 16, the 6 comes down, and you carry the 1 over. Okay. Then the next step we do is 5 times 2, which is 10 plus 1, and we get 11. Now we add both of those numbers together all the way down. 4 plus 0 is 4. 7 plus 6 is 13. 3 comes down, and 1 gets carried over. So now we have 1, 2, and 3. And the 1 comes straight down. So we get 1,334 and 1,200. All right, let's go ahead and do division 1. We'll do, we can do D because it's division, right? Something fun and different and hard and challenging, okay? So lesson practice B. It is 1,845 divided by 9. Now, when we're looking at 1,845, since it's in the thousands, we're actually going to round it to the nearest 1,000, okay? Because we're not going to round it to the nearest 10. So if it doesn't specify round to the nearest 10 or to the nearest hundreds or to the nearest thousands, if it's a number in the thousands, you're going to round to the thousands. Okay, if it's a number in the hundreds, you'll round to the nearest 100. If it's a number within 10, you'll round to the nearest tens. Okay, just so you guys know, just in case, because it doesn't say round to the nearest 1,000. So we're going to assume that that's what they're asking us to do. Okay, so because we're rounding to the nearest 1,000, we need to look at the 8 right here. Okay, and 8 is greater than 5, so that means 1 is going to go up. Okay, our 1 is going to go up. So this is actually going to be rounded to 2,000. And I'm going to write it a little bit lower because I'm going to need some extra work to work out the real problem. Okay. And then we look at the 9, and 9 is above 5. So that means that we are rounding it to, hopefully you answered that, to 10. All right, so 10 cannot go into 2. So let's put a 0 up here. Okay, so now we're going to divide within 20. Okay, now we're looking at 20. 10 goes into 20 how many times? 2 times. 10 times 2 is 20. Then we subtract. 0 minus 0 is 0, and 2 minus 2 is 0. And then we bring it down. Okay, we know that 10 goes into 0 times. 10 times 0 is, in fact, 0. Oh my goodness. Okay. Then we have one more 0 left, and we bring it down. Again, 10 goes into 0 how many times, class? Wow, you guys are so smart. 0. So that means our estimate is going to be 200. Okay, now let's work out the real problem right next door. Okay, so I have 1,845 divide by 9. Okay, can 9 go into 1? So we're going to put a 0. 9 times 0 is 0. So now we're going to divide with an 18 using both numbers. Okay, so 9 goes into 18 how many times? 2 times. 9 times 2 is 18. So now we're going to subtract. We get 0. And now we bring down the 4. Can 9 go into 4, class? No. Hopefully that was your answer. So 9 times 0 is 0. 4 minus 0 is 4. And then we bring down the 5. Okay. Now we see how many times 9 goes into 45. And 9 goes into 45 how many times, class? 5. 9 times 5 is 45. Then we subtract 45 minus 45 is 0. So our answer on this side would be 205. You can go ahead and pause that here if you need to look at those. Okay. So that's how you would round these problems. Okay. And then also finding out the exact quotient as well without rounding. Okay. All right, let's look at example E. Lesson practice E, because I love to do word problems. I hope you do too. Okay, so let me move the camera down just a little bit and get out of the way here. Okay, lesson practice E. And I'll also switch my marker to a different color. We're going to go with green today. Lesson practice E. Ooh, that's a bit bright. It says a ferry can carry 843 people. About how many people can the ferry carry on a round trip? Okay, a round trip means that you're going there and you're coming back. So that means that if the ferry can carry at one time, okay, so one trip there is 843 people. Okay, so that means going there. And then coming back, the number wouldn't change because the boat is the exact same. So that means it would just be 2 times. So they're going there and coming back 2 times. So your problem is going to look like this, right? 843 times 2. And I don't like the way it's set up like that. So I'm just going to bring my 2 right underneath it. 843 times 2. Okay, so that's how we find the answer. So it says about. There's the word about. And we all know that about really actually means, you guessed it, to estimate. Which we know the word estimate actually really means to round. Okay, to round the number. Let me erase this 205 right here. That's not confusing for you. Okay, to round the numbers. Okay, so first thing we're going to do. Now, if it is under 5, you're not going to round it to 0. You're just going to leave it at 2. Okay, there's no need to move that. But we are going to round this 843. So if we're going to round to the nearest 100, what number do you think we need to look at? I'll give you 5 seconds. Okay, so we need to look at the 4. Good job, everybody. So we need to round the 8, so we're looking at the 4. The 4 is greater than 5 or less than 5. Hopefully you said less than 5. So that means that the 8 is going to stay the same. So nearest 100 means it's going to turn into 800. And then we multiply it by 2 because it's a round trip. We are going there and we're coming back. So that means 2 times the boat is going to carry people. So now we multiply. 2 times 0 is 0. 2 times 0 is, it's still 0. And 8 times 2 is 16. So that means we have 1,600 people. And that's your answer for lesson practice E. All right, you can go ahead and pause that if you need the work. If not, go ahead and take out your homework page. All right, let's do some lesson practice. Let's do some math problems from your homework. All right, I have my paper right here, okay? And so I'm going to make sure that I do WP 91. This is for Wednesday, so we're on 4-1 20. And my name is Miss Flores. Hi, nice to meet you. All right, the first problem we're going to do is number 1. Okay, number 1. So number 1, it gives you a chart to use while you're answering the questions. So make sure that you look at the actual chart while we're answering the questions, okay? So the chart says activities of 100 children at the park. So that means that there's a total of 100 children. Now, I see that these questions are a little bit longer, so I'm going to actually just do A, B, C, D, because it's probably not going to fit in the box because there's so many questions, okay? So question A says, altogether, how many children were at the park? Again, it's in the title, so, and I just wrote on 4. I'm not sure why I wrote on 4. I am so sorry. A, B, C, D. Okay, so don't worry about number 4. If you'd made the same mistake, don't worry about it. Now it just looks like a huge rectangle in your math homework. All right, so A is going to be 100 children because it gives us that information already. B, how many children were not swimming? So if there was a total of 100 children, and it tells us that swimming there were 19, that means we're going to subtract. So we're going to subtract 100 minus 19 because that's how many were swimming. So we cannot do 0 minus 9. So we need to borrow. There's nothing to borrow from 0. So the 1 now becomes a 0. We carry over the 1. The 10 now becomes a 9, and we carry over the 1. So now we can subtract 10 minus 9, which is 1, and 9 minus 1, which is 8. So that means B, how many of them were not swimming? 81 children, because they're not whales, they're children. So make sure you label correctly. All right, C says, how many children were either hiking or skating? So that means we're going to add. So let's see, how many were hiking? We have 12. And how many were skating? 15. So that means we're going to go ahead and add 12 plus 15. 5 plus 2 is 7. And 1 plus 1 is 2. So now we have 27 children, not dolphins, who are hiking or skating. All right, C, how many? Oh, I just did C. D, how many more children were flying kites than were swimming? So if we look at flying kites, we see that there were 20. Since that's more, we're going to subtract the swimming, which is only 19. And that's an easy problem. Just by looking at it, we know that it is one more child, not seahorse. Okay, so make sure you label that correctly. And you can put C box right there. All right, the next one we're going to do is number 5. Okay, number 5. If you want to pause on the work right there and try and see if you did it correctly, you can go ahead and do that at any time. All right, so number 5, it says estimate the product of 39 and 406. Then find the exact product. So the numbers they give us first off is going to be 406 times 39. Okay, that's the first problem they give us. But we need to estimate, which means that we need to round. So 406 is going to be rounded to what class? You guessed it. The nearest 100, which is actually 400. Okay, and it's still in multiplication. And that means 39 is going to be rounded to the nearest 10, which we look at the 9, and that's it's greater than 5. So we're going to go up. So that turns into 40. So now we multiply. Now don't worry about the zeros. We'll add those later. So let's look at 4 times 4, which is 16. Then we add 1, 2, 3 zeros. 1, 2, 3. So that answer, our first answer, is going to be 16,000. Okay. Then it says to find the exact answer as well. So now we're going to multiply. 9 times 6 is what class? 54. So the 4 comes down, the 5 gets carried over. 9 times 0 is what class? 0 plus 5 is 5. And then 9 times 4, 9, 18, 27, 36. All right, so let's move on to the tens place, okay? Since we're moving on to the tens place, make sure that you put a 0 under the 4 because we're all done with the ones place. Okay? So let's do our first problem, 6 times 3, which is 18. The 8 comes down and the 1 gets carried over. Now, I'm going to draw a line through the 5 because I don't want to confuse myself, okay? Because there's so many numbers We don't want to confuse ourselves. All right, so 3 times 0 is 0 plus 1 is 1. Then we do 4 times 3, and we get 4, 8, 12. Now we add straight down. Okay, 4 plus 0 is 4, and 8 plus 5 is 13. The 3 comes down, the 1 gets carried over. 6 plus 1 is 7, plus 1 is 8. 3 plus 2 is 5, and 1 plus 0 is 1. So then your actual answer is 15,834. All right, moving on to the next problem that I'm going to do with you is number 7. Here we go. Number 7. So they give you a few different fractions, and it says on number 7, write these fractions in order from least to greatest. So right now, you guys understand that we can show these fractions by drawing them to see if they are from how to organize them from least to greatest. Okay, so I'm going to use the same amount for each fraction. Okay, so I used 4 boxes right here. So I'm going to draw another 4 boxes right here. And I'm going to draw another 4 boxes right here. Okay, so that tells me that each one is the same, because same whole number. Okay, so same one. So this needs to be split into 4 pieces for 3/4. So I'm going to split it like this way: 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. And then for the half, that means I need to split it into 2 pieces. And for 8, okay, let's see if I could do this. Means I need to have 4 on each side. Oof. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I did it. Okay, so it's not exactly perfect, but you can kind of get a gist of how to do this. Okay, then I'm going to shade in 3 pieces, because that is my numerator. Okay, this one I'm going to shade in 1 piece because that is my numerator for this fraction. This one I'm going to shade in 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so just looking at that, you can see which pieces that are left unshaded are greater or least, which is going to be the smallest. The greatest piece unshaded. Okay, so if we're looking at least to greatest, okay, we're looking at the biggest piece that is not shaded. And just by looking at it, we see that 1/2 piece is actually way bigger. So that's going to be our smallest fraction from least to greatest. Okay, now we're looking for the next biggest piece. Is it going to be this one or this one? This one looks like a little bit bigger than 3/4. But in reality, 3/4 is like 75%. Okay, so that's actually covering a lot. And we know that 5 is just a little bit over than 50%, because 50% of 8 would be 4. So it's just a little bit bigger than 4. So that means that this one is going to be our next fraction, 5/8. And that means that 3/4 will be our biggest piece, okay? Our biggest shaded piece. All right, so moving on, we're going to jump down to number 12. Number 12. All right, number 12 says, write true or false. Okay, true or false. So we just need to read these statements and say if they're true or false. So A, again, I'm just going to do my work in here because it's a lot of writing. So it says all squares are rectangles, true or false. Yes, because rectangles are simply 4 sides, and the lengths might be different, but a square essentially has 4 sides that connect. So that is going to be true. All right, B, all trapezoids are quadrilaterals, and that is true. So a quadrilateral, if you remember what quadrilateral, that means that they could have equal sides, and they would have 4, okay? So that is going to be True. If we go down to C, it says all equilateral triangles are congruent. That is going to be false because even though you might have an equilateral triangle, meaning that in the triangle all sides are the same size, you could have big equilateral triangles and you can have little ones. So that is going to be false because congruent means that they are exactly the same. D, all triangles have at least one right angle. That is false because sometimes they don't have any right angles at all. So false. And E, all squares are similar. True. They are all similar because squares, no matter how you draw a square, is always a, well, square. Okay. Moving on to the back, we're going to jump down to number 26. Okay. Number 26, it says draw and shade circles to show that 2 1/3 equals 7/3. Okay. So again, looking at that mixed number first, because we know how to do that. Okay. Trying to make our circles as even as possible. Okay. These are kind of even. And our denominator is 3, so they all need to be in 3 pieces. Again, just trying to make it as even as possible. Okay. And it's shading 2 whole, because that's our whole number, and 1/3. Cool. So if we were to count up all the pieces we've shaded, we should add up to 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and we get that exact number. Again, you can write C box. All right, number 29. Let's jump to number 29. Number 29 says 31 students are entering a classroom. The desks in the classroom are arranged in rows with 7 desks in each row. If the students fill the row of desks, then fill the second row of desks, and so on, how many full rows of students will there be? How many students will sit in a row that is not full? So basically what they're asking you is there's 31 students total. So I'm going to write that number right here, okay? And in each row, there can only be 7 desks, okay? So that means we're going to divide by 7 to see how many rows are going to be full, okay? So 7 cannot go into 3. So we're going to have to see how many times 7 goes into 31. So we need to count by 7s. 7, 14, 21, 28. So we will go 4, which we know that that is 28. Then we're going to subtract. You can't subtract 1 minus 8. So you borrow from the 3, and that becomes 2. Carry over the 1. That becomes 11. 11 minus 8 is 3. Good job. 2 minus 2 is 0. So that means we have 4 rows that are full, and that means 3 students are in a row by themselves. So we have 4 rows, okay? And that's our first answer. Then we have 3 students as our second answer. Okay. Number 30. What is the length of the segment? Explain your reasoning. So I don't know if you guys remember how to do this. It's been a while since we did this. But if you look at your segment, okay, I'm just going to kind of draw it over here. So we'll say this is the coordinates were 1, 7, and it is 2, 3, 4, 5. So the other dot is about right here. Okay, and that coordinate is 6, 7. So I'm just writing the exact coordinates down that you get in your book. Okay. And then it also has, this, y and x-axis and that whole thing. Okay, so this is my x-axis and this is my y-axis. Okay. So when you're looking at the length, okay, we need to find the length of this line. That means we're going to count the units in between. So you can sit there and count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units. I'm sorry, you don't count the lines. You count the space in between. And I think I went over too many. I did go over too many. I'm sorry about that. Okay, so you can sit and count them if you drew it correctly. But an easy way to do that is to look at your x-axis number. So we have a 6 here, and we have a 1 here. And you're going to take the bigger number, and you're going to subtract the smaller number from the big number. So we can easily do this by doing 6 minus 1. We know that's an easy problem. We get 5. So that means it was going to be 5 units. Because remember, x is telling us the length, right? We go horizontal for x, left to right, right to left. But the way you can figure out the distance in between is to subtract the smaller number from the bigger number to find how many units are in between each point. All right, 4th grade, I hope that was helpful for you. If you have any questions for your homework tomorrow, feel free to leave a comment, send me an email, and maybe I can add that problem into your homework when we go through it. So I hope you guys are doing well, and we'll see you next time. Bye.